So as we all expected, Joe Burrow getting selected first overall by the Cincinnati Bengals. Can't say we didn't see it coming, but you know what? It is a very exciting time to be a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I mean, they've waited a long time for a postseason win, and perhaps this is the guy who's going to lead them to one. Joe Burrow, obviously, he does so much well. Let's just talk some film study. Let's just get into it, and we'll start things off with this play. What's going to happen is that it's a cover 3 zone that Auburn is in, and for LSU, the receivers are going to be running those routes right there. So, okay, a lot to unpack here, but there's the one thing that Burrow is going to look at first. One thing Burrow likes the best, and it's going to be really coming down to that Auburn player right there. There are a receiver and a halfback who are going to be running one past him, one underneath him, and so obviously you can't cover both of those two guys. So, that's one option that Burrow has on the table is he looks over there, sees that if the Auburn player is running too far underneath or staying too far deep, then you hit the other guy. That's what Burrow's first read on this play is going to be. However, if he doesn't like what he sees, instead what he's going to do is try to look over there. There's another receiver who's going to be running sort of in between the gap, in between the linebackers and the safety who's deep. So that's another gap that could get open. Burrow could look to throw it in that direction. Just another option that is on the table, and then the third option on the table would be just hitting, somebody underneath. It could be that receiver or the other receiver who's running underneath. One of those two guys would be where Burrow is going to look. So those are his options. Basically, he's going to go from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen in terms of options. And so right after the ball is snapped, you notice that he looks up, and this Auburn player is actually doing a pretty good job of making sure that he's kind of in a place where he could be covering up either option, whether Burrow wants to throw it deep. There's not a huge window there. He could dump it off, but keep in mind, this is a 2nd down and 11, so dumping it off here, that Auburn player could move up, make a good tackle. You might only gain like 3 or 4 yards, which isn't really that good on 2nd down and 11. It's not a disaster either. I mean, you can gain some yards. That's pretty good, but you don't want to have a 3rd down and 11, so that's not a terrible option. But Burrow he decides, what, I'm not going to take that chance. I'm instead gonna look somewhere else. That's what I think will make the most sense right here. So that's what he's gonna do. He's instead gonna move over to his second read. Then he looks over, and again, this is kind of off screen, so it's hard to tell, but he doesn't like what he sees there either. So now he's already gone through 2 reads, doesn't like either of them. So now he has to go and try to find his third option, and then he finally finds something open and is able to make the throw to gain about 7 yards on that play. In a vacuum, gaining 7 yards on a 2nd down and 11, it means absolutely nothing. It's not a big deal whatsoever, and really, again, doesn't really mean much at all. But at the same time, it kind of just goes to show what this guy can do and how he can go through his progressions so well, and how he can look at his options and decide, what, I don't love that, I'm going to go to the second option. You know what, that would have been great, but that's not open, so I'm going to instead just try to gain some yards by going to my third option, and that one finally was open. There's plenty of reasons why he's been getting compared to Tom Brady. One of those reasons is because people are dumb and want to compare a guy who has never played an NFL game to the greatest quarterback of all time, but another one of those reasons is because he is so good at going through his progressions, because he is such a smart player, he's going to get a comparison to another well-known smart player, and that's where the Brady comparisons come in. He's not Tom Brady, but he's really good at that, and he had such a good college season last year, and he did so many things well. Let's get into another play, and I will actually, right before I get into this next play, I will bring up some negatives, but I want to talk about the positives first, so I'm going to get into that. Then I will say some things he has to work on, but anyways, stay tuned for that. On this play, what's going to happen is that it's going to be a cover 1 blitz, actually, so even though Auburn only has 3 defensive linemen at the line, 2 linebackers will be rushing in, so there will be a total of 5 players rushing the passer on this play. And for Joe Burrow, that's the receiver he wants to hit, which makes a lot of sense. It's a good route against this type of coverage, so that's where he's going to look and throw this ball to, and he's going to do a very good job of, right when the ball is snapped, making a very accurate throw, and it would have been complete. Again, the receiver kind of fell down, didn't run a great route, but, that was where you want that ball to be. The receiver kind of didn't fully get the job done. But I thought that was a really good play from Burrow again because he realized the play, read the situation, and made the correct decision, and made a really good throw on top of it, which is really all you can ask for, kind of. He does have that sort of, those superstars that seemingly just like are an extra level. It's almost like they play the game four-dimensionally, where they just see things that other players don't. Like the Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers is. Well, he kind of has that little thing in him. Again, nowhere near am I calling him one of those guys. He's a big prospect. He's a great prospect. He isn't the greatest prospect we've ever seen as a quarterback, but he is still very good. But he just sometimes sees things that a lot of other quarterbacks don't see. Even veterans in the NFL won't see, and he's seeing it at the college level. This play is a good example where, so basically that's a situation that he's going to take a look at where you'll notice those two Mississippi State players, they're communicating right here. They're trying to figure out exactly what their play is. But Burrow looks up. He knows his receiver is running that route right there. He sees that a defender is out of position right now, which makes some sense. I mean, if you look at the play clock, there's 32 seconds left in the play clock. So there's plenty of time, so they're trying to communicate. But Burrow looks up, realizes the situation, and gets the ball and quickly makes a throw in that direction and gets the touchdown right there. So, again, noticing opponents' weaknesses is a very important thing in football. That, when you see somebody who is screwing up, then you want to make sure you take advantage of that. One of the things I always talk about is every now and then in the NFL or just in football in general, your opponents are going to screw up. In fact, it's going to be more than every now and then. It's going to happen relatively frequently. The good teams don't get lucky. The good teams take advantage of their opponents' mistakes. That's what Joe Burrow did on that play, and that's what Joe Burrow does constantly. So that's something that he can bring to Cincinnati, is an ability to take advantage of that kind of thing. So, okay, I said I was going to get into some negatives, and to be honest, there isn't a ton. There isn't. One negative that I do find in his game is going to be shown on this play, where it's a cover 3 zone that he's going up against, and that's the route he wants to hit. It's a receiver running a route like that. This is a great route against cover 3 because, A, you're going to get past the linebacker, but then when you sort of cut back to the sideline, the corner who's in charge of covering that top third of the screen might be running closer towards the middle of the field because he thinks that's where you're running. So when you cut to the sideline, you can gain some more separation. So those are routes that are very good against this type of coverage, and that's what Burrow wants. That's where Burrow is going to look. Also worth mentioning, he has a little route underneath right there. That's a check down route, so that's your check down. Look at the first read. If it's not open, hit the check down. This makes sense. That's what Burrow's going to do, and it's what he should do. However, very early on, you are going to notice that an Auburn player right there is doing a great job at winning his own one-on-one matchup. So for Burrow here, you got to just take the check down. I know you want to throw the ball deep, and it looks like that route could get open, but you're just not going to have the time to make that throw. So hit the check down, gain some yards, but Burrow just hasn't noticed this totally quite yet, and he is going to end up getting sacked right here. So this is kind of, I do think his pocket presence is pretty good for his age, but I do think that, being able to notice that kind of thing and take a check down is the kind of thing that separates him from actually being Tom Brady. Doing those little things is going to be something that at a certain point, again, I do realize how difficult something like that is, but I'm just saying that I do think that sometimes you see him not realizing totally what's going on, not making the correct decision all the time. Sometimes he tries to go too hard for that deep route, and I think that if he looked around a little bit more, was a little bit more patient, maybe even checked the line before you even look deep downfield, that might have actually done him some good, and he might have then been able to, hit the check down and gain some yards as opposed to getting sacked, which, again, I know a check down doesn't seem like much, but gaining 5 yards as opposed to losing 7 is obviously a huge swing. That's a 12-yard swing. So that instead of it being a 3rd down and 5 potentially, it's third down and 17, which is almost a death sentence. That last play was on 1st down, but I'm just saying in general, this is one more negative. One more slight negative in his game, it's going to be man coverage. You're going to see that those two, it's a receiver and a halfback. They're going to run that concept right there in the top half of the screen. Makes some sense. Both guys are going to be in the end zone. Burrow can basically just take his pick as to who he finds most open. But right after the ball is snapped, since this was a all-out blitz, Burrow does not have too much time to make a throw. This was cover zero, meaning it's one-on-one matchups across the board, and then everyone else is rushing the passer. So there's going to be one extra rusher than there is blocker, meaning that for Burrow, he has to be careful here because there's going to be someone who gets through completely untouched, and that's what's happening here. He looks downfield, and that's where he wants to hit, but he's just not open. There's no separation here. Maybe there's a slight chance his receiver could get open, but this would just not be a correct decision to make. However, Burrow ends up firing it in there anyways, and it nearly got intercepted, could have gotten intercepted, also was almost caught. So, both guys had a chance at that. I mean, it looked like it was going to be a catch for a second there. The reason why I say nearly intercepted was because if 29 turned around first, then that is intercepted. I mean, it all came down to who turns around first. If 29 turns around first, it's an interception, and if he doesn't, well, then it's an incomplete pass. Just not a correct decision by Burrow, and I do think he's probably going to throw a bit of interceptions at the NFL level once it's going to take him a second because things did go so well for him when he was with LSU. So I could see it being yet another, kind of just a problem for him. I definitely could see that happening where, when he goes and once he starts playing in the NFL, when the talent level is much higher, he was kind of just rolling over guys all year in college. He's not going to be able to do the same thing in the NFL, and it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts. I think he will. I really like him as a prospect. I think he'll be a very good player. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I did want to bring up some negatives, and, a couple of them are admittedly a bit of a stretch. The first negative was really me nitpicking, but, sometimes it's important to nitpick some of the best prospects you can find because I know you guys always want to try and see some negatives and some positives. I wanted to try and find some. There's not a lot. The second one I do actually think is a bigger negative than the first one. I think that is something that I can see him sometimes trying to go for the home run ball too much. Maybe he'll be better off just, trying to methodically move down the field, which I actually think fits his skill set better. But if he's given the right coaching and the right guidance, I fully expect him to be a superstar for many years to come. And even if he's not given the right coaching or guidance, he still could be a superstar. So that's what I think. I'd like to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.